Chosen one, you thought change would be obvious. A breakthrough, a dramatic decision, a moment everyone could see. Instead, it began in silence, in the brief hesitation between what you always did and what you suddenly could not do the same way anymore. Lately, you have felt different. Not better, not worse, different. The same conversations feel heavier. The same routines feel strangely empty. The same environments no longer fit as naturally as they once did. You may not know exactly why, but you can feel it. And that feeling is not random. It is the beginning of awareness. At first, the changes are small, easy to dismiss. You take longer to answer a text. A conversation that used to feel normal starts draining you halfway through. Someone asks for something you would usually agree to without thinking. And instead of saying yes automatically, you hesitate. That hesitation is new. So is the silence that follows. You begin noticing things that were always there. How often people repeat the same complaints. How certain relationships revolve around your accommodation. How some interactions leave you feeling subtly depleted. None of this is dramatic. That is what makes it easy to overlook. From the outside, you still seem the same. You go to work. You answer messages. You show up where you are expected. But internally, something has shifted. The familiar no longer feels automatic. You can sense the moment your energy starts pulling back. Not because you are trying to detach, because you are noticing what it costs to keep participating in the same way. And once that cost becomes visible, your experience changes. The pattern is still there, but now you are watching it. The first reaction is often confusion. You wonder whether something is wrong. Why am I so quiet lately? Why do I feel disconnected? Why does everything seem different when nothing obvious has happened? So you try to fix it. You tell yourself you are overthinking. You push yourself to engage more. You laugh when it does not feel natural. You say yes when part of you wants to pause. For a moment, it works, at least on the surface. But internally, the strain becomes harder to ignore. The old responses still function. They just no longer feel true. And that creates a new kind of discomfort. Not the discomfort of conflict. The discomfort of realizing how much of your behavior was automatic. You begin to see how often you explained yourself before anyone asked. How quickly you moved to prevent tension. How frequently you adjusted to preserve approval. These patterns were not flaws. They were adaptations. They helped you maintain connection. They helped you stay accepted. They helped you avoid becoming a problem. For years, they felt like your personality. Now they feel like something you learned. And that recognition can be unsettling. Because if these responses were adaptations, who are you without them? This is where awareness deepens. You stop focusing only on what you feel and begin seeing the mechanism behind it. The pressure did not start recently. It has been shaping you for years. Pressure to be agreeable, pressure to stay useful, pressure to avoid disappointing people, pressure to remain emotionally manageable. Over time, your mind became highly efficient. It learned to scan for tension, to anticipate what others wanted, to adjust before conflict appeared, to suppress reactions that might create friction. These adjustments were intelligent, but repetition turned them into default behavior. What began as a strategy eventually felt like identity. That is why this phase feels so significant. You are not simply noticing that something feels off. You are recognizing that much of your behavior was organized around unconscious pattern management. And now that system is becoming visible. You catch yourself halfway through an unnecessary explanation. You hear your own voice softening around someone whose approval still affects you. You agree to something and feel your body tighten. In each of these moments, awareness inserts a pause. The pattern still appears, but you are no longer fully inside it. That distance changes everything, because once you can observe a pattern in real time, you gain a choice. Not always an immediate action, but a choice. And choice is the beginning of reorganization. You no longer ask only, how do I keep this comfortable? A different question emerges. Is this actually aligned with what is true for me? That question has consequences, because some relationships depend on your automatic accommodation. Some routines survive only because you never question them. Some identities remain intact only while you continue responding unconsciously. Awareness does not destroy these structures. It reveals how they were built. And once you understand how something was built, you begin to see whether it still belongs in your life. This is where the process becomes uncomfortable. Your environment still expects the old version of you. The one who answered quickly, the one who smoothed things over, the one who kept everything stable. But your internal experience is changing. You take longer to respond. You agree less automatically. You stop filling every silence. People notice. Sometimes they ask what is wrong. Sometimes they become impatient. Sometimes they push harder, not because they understand what is changing, but because they can feel that your usual response is no longer available. This creates pressure. Part of you wants the clarity that awareness is bringing. Another part wants the relief of returning to what is familiar. And familiar is powerful. Even when it is exhausting, you know how to be the dependable version of yourself. You know how to minimize your needs. You know how to absorb tension. You know how to keep relationships functioning through constant adjustment. But now you can feel the cost. The cost appears in your body, a tightening in your stomach, a heaviness after certain conversations, a sense of depletion that lingers longer than it used to. Nothing catastrophic happens. Yet more and more, your system tells you the same thing. This no longer fits. That realization can feel lonely, not because you are failing, because you are standing between two identities. One was built around adaptation. The other is beginning to organize around awareness. In this in-between season, things may feel unstable. Some habits lose their appeal. Some relationships become harder to maintain. Some environments stop feeling like home. It may look like loss, but what is actually happening is reevaluation. The structures that depended on your unconscious participation are being tested, and not all of them will remain. Gradually, the confusion starts to organize itself. What once felt like emotional heaviness begins to reveal a pattern. You see where your energy has been leaking. You recognize which relationships rely on your constant accommodation. You notice how often familiarity was mistaken for alignment. And something becomes clear. Truth feels different. It is quieter. There is less urgency, less performing, less need to secure a particular reaction. Even when the outcome is uncertain, your body feels steadier. That steadiness becomes a guide. You stop responding to every message immediately. You decline invitations that no longer feel meaningful. You let certain conversations end without over-explaining. You stop carrying dynamics that only survive because you keep supplying the energy. This is not detachment. It is conservation. Your attention becomes more deliberate. Your energy becomes more protected. Your responses become more honest. And with that honesty comes space. At first, that space can feel uncomfortable. You may interpret it as emptiness, but it is not a void. It is room. Room to hear your own thoughts. Room to notice what you actually want. Room to build a life that does not depend on constant self-abandonment. This is where alignment begins. Not as a dramatic declaration, as a series of quieter decisions. What deserves my energy? What feels true? What no longer requires me to become someone else in order to belong? These questions reorganize identity, and as they do, your life starts to feel simpler, more precise, more honest. Over time, what once felt unfamiliar becomes natural. The pause no longer feels strange. It becomes part of how you move. You trust your own timing. You let silence do some of the work. You listen more closely to the signals your body has been sending all along. Something that once seemed insignificant becomes a new center of gravity. That brief hesitation, that moment of awareness, that internal recognition that says, quietly but clearly, this does not fit, or this feels true. From that center, your behavior changes. You respond with greater intention. You become less reactive, not colder, clearer. There is less effort to be understood, less reflexive accommodation, less urgency to preserve every connection. People notice the difference, not because you announce it, because your presence feels more grounded, more selective, more certain. The most important shift remains invisible. You trust your awareness. And once you trust what you are seeing and feeling, your identity stabilizes around something deeper than adaptation. It stabilizes around truth. You thought transformation would arrive as a dramatic moment, a breakthrough, a decision, a visible turning point. Instead, it began when you noticed a pause. Someone said something they had said many times before. The old response appeared. And for the first time, you did not follow it automatically. That was the moment. Small, quiet, easy to miss. But once you felt it, you could not unknow it. You were not becoming disconnected. You were becoming aware. You were not losing yourself. You were seeing the patterns that had shaped you. You were not broken. You were reorganizing. And that is why you feel different lately. Not because something is wrong, because something inside you has changed. And now that you can feel it, you cannot go back. This is obsidian within, forged in the shadows, destined for more.